Hey,
For that, Neil?
That we're good to go.
No Stephen today?
GPG. Stephen cannot make it. So welcome for one person online to our meeting tonight. Today's Monday, April 7th. I'm Sabrina Dunlap. We have Vicki Graham, Alyssa McCann, Jeff Donahoe, and Stephen Whitley cannot be with us tonight. So first up, we have points of pride.
Oh. Do I have any? I must. People, what's going on this week? I'll just note how helpful I think the two tours that the board has done so far. The police station, the police and the DPW. And I think department heads really appreciate that. So I appreciate them getting ready for those and doing that. And I am sure the next 6 will be as beneficial and helpful.
Yes, they're super helpful and we appreciate, oops, sorry.
Uh-huh.
All of the time they put in to tell us what they do on a day-to-day basis. It's very helpful.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
Yeah,
I think that could be a point of pride,
yeah,
and the edger.
yeah.
It was really neat.
Yeah.
Your son liked the picture of you in there.
Oh, yes. I showed it to the adults too.
Start it. It's pretty fun to start it. I
Man.
only did that once.
But yeah, it gives us a good sense of like the scope of what all these town departments do. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, but really it is broad and extensive. And we're lucky we have such high functioning departments in this town. Okay. Anyone else have any points of pride? All right, then we can move on to administrative. First up is approval of the consent agenda.
I'll move that we should approve the consent agenda as provided.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Didn't you used to say like yes or something?
No, I was the only one saying aye last time. In
Oh.
the minutes, that's what it says.
Oh. So next up is
Converted everyone else.
Roberta, good job. All right, approval of the public meeting minutes of March 24th, 2025.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous. And then we have 2 more sets of public meeting minutes from our department tours. First is the public meeting minutes from April 1st, 2025.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. All
Aye.
right, it's unanimous. And approval of the public meeting minutes from April 4th, 2025.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, we have no public appointments tonight. So we will move on to old business. First is the ongoing project update.
Sure, this is just kind of an overview of all the projects we have going on. Just to bring everybody up to date. So this is the George Park plan that was done in 2018. It's a phased plan. We have done largely phase 1 is done. There's the road, which has been done. All of this area has also been done. The parking lot, which isn't in phase 1, but has been done as part of the road. I think that's basically what's been done so far. This does include a track because that was the discussion ongoing. The talk back then was if a track were ever to be done, the town would pay a third, the school would pay a third, and fundraising would pay a third. Let me go to the numbers. We've updated numbers for different segments as they've come due, as they've gotten closer to being done. But largely, the numbers we have are the 2018 numbers.
Her handwriting. Sounds really neat.
May I ask a
Oh.
question, Neil?
Sure.
So if these are the 2018 numbers, when did construction on the project begin?
So we've done probably nothing in 18. It's been in the capital improvement plan and is one of those things that's been pushed off. I think my guess is probably around 20 and 21, we completed phase one. The chain link fence along Park Avenue was actually jointly paid for by the town and school, and that was done last year. So here are the numbers broken out by phases. And so this year, what we have in the CIP plan, $200,000 to do the bathrooms, which is slightly different than the map you saw because they're going to stay where they are. The plan calls for 4 individual bathrooms with a center sort of storage area with 2 garage doors that you enter that way. It will match the dugouts. The dugouts were done by volunteers and donations, at least on the baseball field. The softball dugouts haven't been done yet. The other thing is the softball field in the plan you saw has been shifted to keep it a softball field versus shrinking it. So that's kind of where George Park is at. So every year during the CIP process, each phase gets looked at. The main goal back when this was done was so that we weren't doing things kind of willy-nilly that we would have to move later on. So we've tried to match that, and depending on what the priority is to do at that point, I think it's be interesting to see if a track really ever gets done.
So, Neil, when this came up for discussion last fall, I think it was the CIP issue of the bathrooms. There was some unhappiness expressed about how the fields were oriented, asking if they could be relooked at. I know that a couple of people contacted me and said, hey, if we're going to relook at it, I want to be on the committee. I don't know that we're gonna, but I just wanted to remind us that happened.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so that's something you definitely could look at. I'm just showing you what is there too. But yes, at that meeting, it was questioned if the fields were aligned correctly. I think largely the goal at that point was to make sure everything they wanted to get in, fit in.
Right.
And maybe some decisions get made that change that. So that's certainly your prerogative. The town owns this completely, 100%. The school uses it, clearly. So.
Can you pull up the map again?
Sure. All right, this is so cumbersome with Zoom, but then people can see it at home.
Okay, great. So I guess I'm a little naive about George Park. It's been a long time since I was on the field hockey team. Do we have a bathroom at the moment?
Yes,
Where is
so
it?
the current bathroom is this basically right here.
Okay, but I think those
And the new
tiny,
bathroom is designed to go here.
okay,
There's been talk of putting it more centrally located to everything.
and there's a water fountain or something there, right? So there's pipes that go out to
It
that
was so-
center.
There is, and part of putting the bathroom in will be right now, there's a septic somewhere here. This will connect it out to the sewer on
Oh.
Park Avenue, so that will that will solve that and do away with that.
But the plan from 2018, the bathrooms located in the middle, it had sort of a grand plan to turn that into also like a nice snack shack and like an announcing booth and stuff. And so a group of concerned people came to us, I guess, late summer, early fallish, maybe, just saying how urgently we need to address the bathroom situation because apparently it's quite bad. So we decided it was not going to be disruptive to move the bathrooms or keep them where they are, I mean, and sort of scrap the idea of it being in the middle. That would not sort of have repercussions for the rest of the plan, whether we stick with the plan or not. So we felt because of the urgency around getting like higher functioning bathrooms, we decided to just try to get her done. So that's the bathroom.
And our instructions from, I think, both the board and the CIP committee are do bathrooms, don't do
Right.
other things. There will be some storage and areas to get to the piping and stuff. And there'll be 4 individual bathrooms versus stall bathrooms. I think there's less to damage. Most of the time, 2 bathrooms could be left open, which covers it, and the 2 others could be opened at other times. It also sort of solves, they're all unisex that way. And so if there's a softball game, a women's softball game, and you have the use depending on who's using it.
So would you consider doing the bathrooms outside of these original phases, or are we sort of tacking that onto the end of phase 1?
No, because the bathroom is part of phase 2.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'd say we're working on phase 2, which would be the bathrooms and then the baseball field.
Yeah, and in 2018, part of the discussion, well, so this had been talked about for a long time, like it predates, I think even Neil possibly, definitely
Yeah.
predated
Oh, yeah.
me in 2018. And there was sort of a feeling like we needed to either do something and like commit to it or just be like, we're never going to do anything. And so we were in this sort of limbo place. So that's why we came up with this phase plan, because at the time, the energy was sort of coming from a group of people who really wanted a track, but a track is super expensive. But there was also, you know, a method to it. Like there are certain things that needed to be, that made sense to do first, like
Sure.
drainage and like the leaching, like doing those things first, and then you can do like shift the fields or do new fields. So there was a reason we did things the way we have done them. It has been a little slower than we wanted, but you know, once you experience going through the budget process, you know that sometimes you have to prioritize. And I think what came up this fall is some people have taken like a new interest in it. And what we talked about as a board is like, personally, I don't think we need to like, or should scrap this, because a lot of people put in a lot of time and we're sort of like on this path. But I think it's fair to sort of revisit some of the ideas. There were some people saying one of the soccer fields, I think, was like oriented the wrong way with like the sun. And so we certainly don't want to like just do things to do them. Like I think input is helpful, but we also have to balance it with sticking to a plan. And like a lot of people put a lot of time in on this. And so I don't want to just like throw it out, which I think is kind of what we talked about a few months ago.
I'm trying to see that the current track is right here. So this is substantially bigger.
Mm.
It's a actual. And so that's what sort of pushed everything else. And that's
I
kind of
see.
where it all started. In one of those years, there was a petition warrant article for, I think it was 3.5 million to build really kind of a stadium here with a track around and a turf field in the middle. That did not gain very much support at town meeting. So, but that's, I think it was probably prior to 2018. It was probably 2017, which sort of was why it's like, okay, we really need a plan.
So not to be selfish, but where is the field hockey field on this?
Use this
Okay,
same area. Right now it's here.
yes.
You probably know better than I do.
Well, just because like the way it is now, soccer and field hockey can be playing at the same time. And it kind of feels like in this, that would be harder.
Well, remember, there's a soccer field here too.
Ah, I
This
see.
is,
I
this is,
see.
so there's this field and this field.
I see. So the tennis courts would,
They're
Tennis
moving
court
apparently,
removed them.
yeah.
This court's parking lot across the field, yeah.
Although those could probably also be moved to Houston. If that's, I think those are probably the most flexible things to move. And I would guess you'd want 2 tennis courts and pickleball courts. Now, things have changed since this was.
I can't remember if we talked about it at the time, because there's currently only 2 tennis courts. I believe maybe we landed on 4 because you can't have a team without at least 4 courts, I
I
believe.
think that may have been the input
That
from,
might
they
be
can't
it.
host a tennis meet
'Cause
without.
there is no high
4.
school team, and I think
So.
there's been some interest in.
So a number of years ago, we did get a grant from the National Tennis USTA, United States Tennis, yeah, and redid the tennis courts, had a big grand opening and so. But they're not predicted to last forever, certainly.
No, they've got a lot of cracks. So I think to tie up George Park, if I could, unless there's other questions, but I think we're continuing on the path, but I think we should, as a board, like open up, get some further input and maybe revisit some of the sequencing. And certainly like if the fields are blatantly like facing the wrong way, I guess we need to discuss that. I think we've only heard that from a small number of people though. So yeah, I think we'll be having George Park on our agenda probably at some point in the next couple months.
yeah, and we can resurrect whatever this, we can change this after those discussions if
Mhm.
something comes of it. Like, for example, I mean, I'm not trying to just throw money at a problem, but we could talk about 2 bathrooms, or we could talk about still having an announcer snack booth in that spot and not necessarily scrapping the whole idea of whatever this was envisioned to be.
Yeah.
Where's that in the procurement cycle now, Neil?
Where's the
Bathroom.
bathroom is, where is it located? Where is it in the?
No, where are you in terms of hiring someone to fix it?
They are in the process of getting contractors. They're having a really hard time with a mason, finding a mason, but I think they've found some people to get prices. So the intent is to really do that this summer.
Who's like
To have it
point on that? Like who's trying to find contractors?
Dan,
Dan?
Blanchett.
Okay.
Yep, Dan and Greg are working on that.
So this project would theoretically fall under like buildings and grounds, right?
Correct.
In terms of managing it through.
Yep, DPW.
Aspirationally, if we were to open this back up for public discussion, I would really, really love to put out invitations to current high school players who are using the field, because I think if we were to show them this and get their feedback about where the sun is or what their experience would be, they spend more time on that field than all of us. And ultimately it's for those types of players. So aspirationally, if we did do a public hearing, I would love to send that over the sports program at Hopkinton and invite kids to come and weigh in because they're the ones using it all the time. And they know better than what I'm gonna know, because I have never stepped foot on that field other than to walk across it to get somewhere else.
HISA does use some of the stuff over there too. So we would want to include HISA as well.
And like Dan Reserve was on the original committee. I think you probably saw her in the PowerPoint who was on that. There were town people and
Mhm.
school and HISA and
And it's less to be like, hey, could you all redesign this? And more to say, if a concern is brought up, is that a concern that the athletes also share who are actively using the field?
Mhm.
Because if they say no, then to me, it's not a thing. And if they say yes, then it's a thing because they're the ones who are doing it for.
I think in all of our discussion, it was that one meeting, the last one, that I heard the concern about the
It's the first
sun,
time
which
anyone
was interesting.
ever expressed a concern about the orientation field.
So,
Plan had been done for 6 years.
Yeah,
So further inquiry.
Okay, cool.
also the sun moves.
Could you?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just saw a planetarium show called The Sun, Our Living Star at Discovery Center on Friday. Owen and I went. A+, do recommend.
Okay, thank you for the George Park overview.
All right, and the next thing I have is roads.
Mhm.
So this year, as Dan said, his plan is to do paving and shimming and chip sealing. Shim, they come in and they level the road, and chip seal, they put down a liquid tar type thing, and then rock on top to get the wear surface. We do have 584,000 in the operating budget to cover paving and shimming. So basically and then another project which isn't funded, but just to sort of update you where we're at on Briar Hill. So it would cost about, for the contractor to finish Briar Hill would be $750,000. And then to pave that portion would be 200,000. And then a top coat on the entire thing would bring the total cost to 1,350,000. We have 660 remaining. So to finish the whole thing, we're short of $690,000. So, and the decision was made not to do that this year. So because of that, basically, we will be top coating using bond proceeds, everything that's been done, everything that was done last year, because you want to put your base coat down, let it settle, but then you don't want to leave just the base coat, or you might have problems with that. So you want to get the top coat on. So that will get done this year. So that's where Briar Hill stands at this point.
Wait, we only need 290 to finish the road?
We need 600, we're short 690,000 to do everything.
Okay. Right, and we did
So
talk
the
about-
cost to do everything right now is 1,350,000 would finish that road.
Mhm.
And we have 660, which leaves 690,000.
So I'm sorry, I think what you said was it would be $750,000 to remake the remainder of the road, $200,000 to pave that, and then $400,000 to do the remaining top
The
coat,
whole top coat.
which equals 1.35.
That's exactly it. So that's that. We do have engineering happening now for the East Pennacook Road Bridge, which is not too far from the transfer station. We have engineering happening now on the Broad Cove Road Bridge. And there is a right of way behind Colonial Village for the sewer, which goes back into the field, and there's a culvert there, and we're doing the engineering on that. Depending on exactly what they find, you'll see in the CIP plan that it is all of these are scheduled. That schedule may need to change based on what they actually find.
Wasn't Pennacook Road, East Pennacook, that was the one we talked about where it's on like the red list or whatever.
Both
for
of
the
those, I
state?
think Broad Cove and East Pennacook.
They are. East Pennacook is the worst.
Yes, and once it hits a level 2 or something, you can't drive on it, I think, right?
Right.
Isn't it?
And
Like,
They can just shut it down at their will.
Right. Yeah, so it's not great.
that would mean the transfer station's like 30 miles from here, because there's no easy.
Yeah.
It's a long detour.
Yeah, wouldn't be. Good.
When you
So-
say something's in engineering, that means that they are looking over it and figuring out how much it's going to cost, what exactly needs to be done.
Exactly. And then this would also include starting the permitting, because that's a large part of why you need engineers to do this, because of all the DES permitting that's required. So those are all going on.
So, sorry,
go ahead.
if all of those are going through engineering right now, then they'll understand how much they're each going to cost, and then they'll rank them by a combination of priority and cost. Do you happen to know where I can go to look to see what is the amount currently put aside for that type of work right now?
We're gonna get to the CIP
Cool. I can make
spreadsheet
that.
next, and it is in there. I have mine in front of me. But yes, we
Did we
could.
do the bridge on East Pennacook 3 years ago?
This is a different one. This is
Oh.
closer to the transfer station.
Okay, that
We
was
did,
5 Bohina Farm.
Right.
Yeah, we did that one, and then there was another one we had done, which bought lots of years, which wasn't too expensive, relatively speaking. And then this is the other one. And the projects voted at town meeting. We're working on doing all the paperwork for the lagoon loan, the sludge removal and the cammering. The sludge removal goes to bond council. So that all that's getting done, and all that will be submitted by the end of this month. So that will be in. As well as the engineers are working to get that done in a time frame and all of that.
Are we gonna be circling back around to the sludge at any point in this conversation, or can I interject a question about that?
You'll interject, because I think that's, in sludge.
Hang on, I just wanna, okay, the end of this month, okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, but basically we built up 22 years of matter in the wastewater treatment plant, and we are going to collect it, evaporate it, and put it into the pit, I don't know what to call it. The pit that's gonna have the contaminated soil from the septic lagoons at the transfer station. But then at that point, it's going to be sort of forever sealed. Is that right? So in 18 more years, when it's time to dredge the wastewater treatment again, that is not going to be an option for us in terms of where to put it.
That's
But-
correct.
But presumably it's still going to be laced with stuff that prevents it from being applied to land. So let's say in 2025, if we didn't have the pit, what are one's options for getting rid of the next round of contaminated wastewater sludge?
Sure. So right now, the option was, I don't even know if it still exists, was to ship it to Canada for storage there. I would guess that I know everybody's dealing with the same thing, that I'm hopeful that there will be better solutions developed in the next 10 to 20 years before we have to do it again.
Okay,
I'm not sure
so,
I'm not sure there's a good answer to that.
okay, yes, I mean, we could presumably store it on site again somewhere here in town if
We could put it
that's the
next
cheapest option. Yeah.
next to where this one is in the same area. That's a possibility. That might be the cheapest option.
Yes.
So
Okay, understood. So we're losing you, and eventually 18 years from now, probably none of us are going to be on this board. So how do we keep track of really long-term stuff? Like in 18 years, we're gonna have to start working on that.
So in the plan, we do have money budgeted for sludge removal in 20, whenever that is, 2020,
45.
yeah, 2035 to 45
Okay,
in that,
in this,
yeah.
okay,
And that is something we may not be even processing the way we are now.
Right.
And Dave may go through some of that, but it seems like our type of wastewater treatment facility is being phased out.
Oh, yeah.
So there may be changes between now and then, and it's done differently.
okay.
A lot of unknowns, unfortunately. All right, so just to sort of, this is the CIP plan. We have the 20, it's what I call the fund flow, not necessarily fun. It should be the sludge flow now. So we go at 20 years, sort of estimating. And this is, so this year, we've already ordered an ambulance, which was scheduled to be here last year. That was ordered last year. That should be in. We have scheduled purchase of rescue equipment this coming year. for the fire department and protective gear. When you do the tour of the fire department, you'll see the protective gear that has a life to it, and it's dated, and once the life is done, you have to get rid of it. We have ordered a cruiser. The chief was able, I think we talked about that, able to find
A charger.
which is much less expensive because we'll be able to transfer all the equipment
Mhm.
from the current vehicle to that. DPW is, and nothing's been funded on town hall renovation. I just note that, so at the end of the month, you'll get to see all the plans we have. So, DPW, we're scheduled to replace a pickup and a 10-wheel dump truck, and we're scheduled to replace the generator at the pump station, the wastewater treatment pump station. The one that's there is very old. We did the generator, which you saw actually from the wastewater treatment facility. We replaced that, and this year we're scheduled to replace the one at the pump station. And so that's what's scheduled to be done this year out of the capital plan.
Is the pump station by the gazebo?
It is, yep. So everything in the sewer system is gravity, it's gravity fed down to that pump station, and then it's pumped from there up to the wastewater treatment facility. So that's one of those vital, and I'm sure Dave will go through this a little more tomorrow. That's an absolute vital part of the whole system, because if it isn't pumped back up, it ends up all right there. So,
Did that project get done the other?
that did get done. The pump hasn't yet been done, but the pipe has been replaced.
Good.
It actually was not deteriorated beyond the outside of the wall. We were down about, I think it was 40 minutes at the most that it wasn't pumping. It all went very smoothly. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done at the pump station. If we get to, I should pull that up and just, so here's, make it a little bit, but you can see that beginning out here in 2030 to 35, we start putting, 2037, we start putting money aside for the next sludge removal. And like the generator replacement. So we try to get as much as we possibly can into here. Let me go back up because we talked about that. So right now, in 2025, we have engineering money, but we have $650,000 budgeted out of the capital reserve fund for the East Pennacook Road Bridge. We have $750,000 for the Broad Cove Bridge in 2028. And then out in 2029, we have engineering money for the 2 culverts on Boundtree Road. I think. So that's where right now. And the sewer right away. We don't know that's not going to be nearly as much. We're doing the engineering on that now. So
What is yearly road project?
So yearly road project could be whatever, like it could be Briar Hill, for example.
Got it.
And so you can either set money aside or bond it, and all of those projects have been bonded because the interest rate was so low and the cost of construction has been rising so much. It was cheaper to do it that way. But we do carry, as those bonds get paid off, the assumption is that's not going to drop off. This money should still be spent. So that's why it jumps up to spending substantial money there as those bonds are paid off. So every year, I would say most every year, the board looks at, okay, should we put it in the capital plan, this road project, or should we do a road bond? Or I know there was some feeling by some board members last year, we should do a bond. I think though, because we had 3 bonds, I don't think we could have done a 5th vote on by ballot on that Thursday night. So, but that's something you'll probably be discussing a lot coming forward. Also in here is some money, I think it's 20% of sidewalks for Maple Street, from Maple Street School to Fountain Square, and from Fountain Square to East Pennacook Road. We submitted a transportation grant that hopefully will be funded to pay for all of that, and that would be our share of that. So that's in there. If we don't get that, we'll try again. We've done that before. Fountain Square itself is in the 10-year state plan, so that is scheduled. That's still a ways out, but that is in there to redo that intersection. We have also submitted for congressionally directed funding money for the lagoon cleanup at the transfer station. If we don't have to borrow as much as we have, that would be great. And we have put in again for the Clean Water Revolving Fund for this, which is 100% paid for the pump station in engineering and design, because that's kind of the next phase. So if we can get grants to do that, that would be good. I think that's sort of most of the big, I think that's all the big projects that are going on.
Will you go into a little bit more detail about the other funding that you just mentioned for the lagoon cleanup?
Sure. So each year, members of Congress, federal United States Congress, and the senators all submit projects to be funded.
Like
So-
pork?
Yeah, yes, exactly like pork. So if we can get a share of that pork, we were happy to do it. So,
Okay.
so we have submitted, we did submit last year. They kind of want that project really shovel ready and ready to go. And our lagoon cleanup is there right now. And it's on the approved list. And so who knows what's going to come. But I guess we keep trying to get funding anywhere we can other than from our own taxpayers.
Much appreciated.
So I think that is all the ongoing projects at the moment. The CIP plan lists hopefully everything as much as possible to kind of see what's planned. And it goes 20 years, like fire trucks are more than 20 years. And one of the big expenses coming up for the fire department is the ladder truck. So I'm sure there'll be discussion on that. That was purchased as a used vehicle, and I think it's almost 30 years old now.
So who is the keeper of that spreadsheet?
So that's my spreadsheet. The CIP committee has it. They've
Okay.
updated it. They have it. They will meet and they can present it to the board. And I assume probably the new town administrator will work with them, just because that's sort of a key thing. And they'll come and meet with you and present that. So it will be Dave Feller, who's the chair of the CIP committee. Leslie. So he actually updated the last version. So
Okay.
he will make sure that that is kept up to date if it's not done by somebody else. Any other ongoing project questions? This is kind of a data dump for me.
Mhm. Okay,
All right.
it's helpful.
I have next sewer rates because we love to talk about. Seems like we used to talk about roads and now we talk about sewer.
And sludge, yeah.
So there are two water precincts in town that own the water systems, the Connecticut Village Precinct and the Hopkinton Village Precinct. But the town of Hopkinton owns the sewer, which, like most similar utilities throughout the state, water and everything, their rates are way below probably what they should be. So, right now we charge a $340 fixed fee for our 222 users. The sewer rate is based on the number of gallons of water used. So we get our usage from the precinct. We have been working with them hard to get their meters to be accurate because they aren't, but they are working on that. And I don't think anyone's being overcharged, but I think people are being undercharged. So for the first 9,000 gallons, it should be, it's at a 0.003 cent per point. Yeah. And then the rate is 0.0075 for everything over that. That's the current rate. That's the amount that we pull in.
I'm so sorry. Can you go back?
Sure.
I wrote down 9,000 gallons, but it actually says $9,000.
Yeah, it's 9,000 gallons.
Okay. So we charge 1/3 of 1 cent per gallon
Yep.
of water
Up to
used.
9,000.
But by used, we mean basically that goes into the sewer.
Nope, that goes
No.
into the house.
Okay, okay.
So, well, we actually, I think 80% of what goes into the house. There's a
Okay.
percentage that's put in there.
There's there's not a way to monitor how much sewer flow there is.
Right,
So it's typically a percentage of the water that goes in.
got it. Because 20% evaporates or we drink it and we use it. Okay.
I think when you drink it, it still ends up in the. It's just-
So, wait, can you go back one more time?
Sure.
So the fixed rate of $340, what is the rate at which that rate is charged? Is that an annual fee?
That is an annual fee,
Okay.
yes. Well, billed twice a year, so they're billed in 2 segments.
Mhm.
But that's the annual. These are all annual. So if you look at our sewer revenue, which are the bars of where we currently are, and you look at our annual operating expenditures, you will see the two do not meet, which is a problem. Revenue, this is capital also, and you see that they don't meet even more so, that the capital costs are way above our revenue line, which is down here. So some of the questions the board really has to answer, should the sewer rates be covering 100% of the operating costs? Should the sewer support, which if it's there, it does, economic development and redevelopment in Connecticut Village, public services, the schools and everything in Connecticut Village, and then expansion. I think looking at where the system is at, expansion is much further off than we had originally hoped, as I think, and you'll hear from Dave more. Since Dave has been on board, which is a little over a year, I think we've learned a lot more about our sewer system and the place that it's at. And we really need to take care of that prior to adding anything to it. The Kemmering may find that stormwater, we know stormwater is going in because when it rains, the flows go up substantially. If we're able to solve that, that might mean we have more capacity to deal with septage versus rainwater.
And the bond is going to cover that because we're going to camera every line.
That's right. That's it. And should the sewer rates cover all operational and capital costs? That's another whole thing. So if you did a 20% increase to the sewer rates per year, you would see that in 2028, we are taking in, and this assumes a 3% increase in operating expenses. This is only operating expenses. You would actually start to cover your costs in 2028. If you did 2 years of 50% increases and then went to 20% increases for 3 years over that 5 years, this is what it would look like. And in 2026, you would be meeting your operating budget and then having additional funds to go towards your capital expenditures.
So Neil, these increases are the fixed fee and the flow rates?
Yes, they're both. And we're gonna recommend we do away with make one rate, not the 9,000 if you're above or below, partly because we don't always get the data exactly every 6 months. So if you go 8 months, more people are over that. It just isn't fair. Hopefully the precinct will get closer to doing that on time, but right now, that's not there. Here's a simple family of 4. They're probably paying about $600 now. They would go up to just over 1,000, then to 1,500, then to 18. Well, it would go up quite. So this is based on the 50% for 2 years and then 20%. So that's how it would affect residents. This shows a 50% year over year every year, and that gets up to covering your capital costs and everything. That's largely it. So
Neil, one of your slides said that Maple Street's on the system. Maple Street School.
they are, and they do
Does that mean
pay.
the high school's not on the system?
The high school is too.
Oh, okay.
She didn't add that,
I thought it was, but
but it is. Yeah, the high school is on the system.
thanks.
So
When we look at covering our costs and how you got to all those numbers and the proposed different paths and price hikes, how does that take into account what I assume to be the larger usage by our school system and by our town buildings on this? So I'm just wondering, when we're looking at spreading that cost across, right? And you ran those numbers for what the average family pays. Where my brain went is the raw data. Did we look at what is the amount? I'm making sure that as we're looking at these numbers, what we didn't do is take Maple Street School and the high school and the fire department and spread it across those families to be the burden of the cost. I guess I'm wondering, how do we break apart the cost of what the school and our town is costing to make sure that we are fairly charging families? And then discuss where that money should come from, as opposed to putting that burden on those folks simply because they happen to be on that line.
right, there is no difference in the rates currently between commercial or any other use besides residential.
Absolutely, but what might change some of our minds as we're discussing is at what point are we covering our costs? But I assume that those costs include Maple Street and the high school and the fire department. And so when we say covering our costs, it would mean by getting the rates from the families on those systems, no?
I want to clarify because I want to make sure I understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
Are you asking if the cost of water for the fire station is pushed over to the other ratepayers in the community? Is the fire station not actually paying? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, and
And the school,
the allocation of the capital improvement percentages that we'd be putting aside. Because when we looked at, if you go to the one that has the multiple colors,
down the last one.
thank you, this one. What I'm thinking about is, did we take into account those users when distributing it? To make sure that we're not accidentally bumping up the cost for residents.
So I think, and check me along, you know, I think the school pays separately, the fire station pays separately.
Okay.
Both schools pay separately, fire station, Bates Building. I think that's all we have for public buildings. in
Slusher Center.
Slusher Center.
Library.
So every public building, so essentially in our town budget, there is a line for water.
Right.
Fantastic. Thank you. That answers my question.
There is, yeah, because it's a separate fund, the sewer fund, and then we pay the precinct too. But we basically do pay for any usage at all of the town buildings. So,
You were looking for action here, Neil?
yeah, so so I guess I've sort of come down to the 50-50, 20-20 as one way to go to start moving forward, but probably the 50% is relatively important to at least start breaking even with the sewer fund.
I have a question. When we talk about operating versus capital, does the operating include the people, our personnel costs?
Yes, the
Okay.
operating budget we have one person. But
okay.
yes, that is all his costs.
What else is in the operating? Electricity, probably.
Electricity,
Building.
which now is almost zero because we have solar.
Physical.
Physical plant, chemicals, all the things that have to get done.
Testing.
Testing, daily testing, supporting the building,
Yeah.
the
Whereas capital improvements is big ticket items that are going to take engineering and planning.
that's right.
Okay.
Upgrades to the plants and there may be no way to ever cover. I'm not sure you can ever cover all the capital costs that are coming down the road. But it seems to me like we should at least be covering the operating costs from ratepayers.
And I have stated in the past, and I will state again, I shouldn't be paying for that sludge removal because I happen to live in town. They don't pay to remove my sludge from my septic system. And so, you know, from a practical perspective, it doesn't seem right, but I understand it's a town asset. I understand that we own it. It's easy to spread it across everybody and the people who use the system don't get penalized as heavy. But anyway, I like it, I know.
Hey, Norm.
I understand the 50-50, 20-20-20. I think that's maybe a little harsh. I'd be sort of a bit more comfortable with 30-30. So the 2020 we don't catch up for 4 years.
Right.
And I mean, we've been losing money on the system every year forever. So I think 2020 is too low. I think 50-50 is too high, somewhere in the middle if it's 30 or 33 or whatever.
33.
For a couple of years, and then if we get to covering our costs, then we can review the increase for that following year based on what we think the costs are going to go up. I mean, Dave certainly has a good idea of what things are likely to go up. The fact that the electricity is basically down to nothing or near nothing helps with some of that. We're still paying for electricity to be even more. So I guess if anybody else wants to jump in, fine, but otherwise I'm going to make a motion to raise the rate.
I have questions. How would our final rate in 2029 compare to neighboring towns?
If you look at systems in the state that have done what they need to do, we're really low. We're much lower than all the cities who are complying and upgrading their systems. Most towns are like us and the rates are too low to support themselves. And DS has been pushing hard to get towns to move towards having a rate that more adequately covers the costs.
And assuming the system is covering its own costs and putting forward money for capital improvements, would that have an impact on the tax bill or would it be negligible?
Eventually, if you were getting up, so you were paying capital costs, it definitely would. Like the bonds we just did, if you're getting your operating up that you can help to pay for that, then it would lower people's tax bills.
And I assume that there's a line item somewhere that covers the difference between what folks are paying and what it actually costs to run the system, or is it?
So that basically comes from the taxpayers as a, yeah.
And where my mind went is I'm looking at the 690 versus the 2683, and that's a huge chunk of change for a family to absorb. And I'm thinking hypothetically, if the town is not paying for it, and therefore the tax bill some way comes down to offset that, obviously it's not coming down that much. Just like that's a lot for, obviously we have to pay for it, but it's a lot for a family to absorb in 5 years. We've already seen huge tax increases.
Yeah, you're not going to see tax bills go down substantially, if
Okay.
at all, for at least a few years. But if that increase were 30% instead of 50%, that certainly is a little easier. Just so the process would be, you would decide what you wanted to do, hold a public hearing, and this would take effect after the next billing. Because right now, people have the current rates and it would take effect.
And if they manage to read the meters, then those bills will go out in June
That's right.
or August like they did last year.
Yeah, hopefully soon. The goal would be April, so that water and sewer bills would go out in April and then tax bills would go out at the end of May, which is easier for the office and everybody.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at this slide of the 50 for 2 years and then 20, we start covering our costs next year. Again, I think that's aggressive. The flip side of that is, that chart that shows the going up to 2,600. Well, after 2026, we don't need to raise them that much. If we did it that way. I think the 50-50 is hard.
Mhm.
I think I'd prefer to go 30% for 3 years and then reevaluate to see if we're covering our costs.
Mhm.
There's big capital expenditures coming for the system at some point.
There is.
Because they're gonna make us rebuild the plant, I believe. I don't know when that's gonna be, but I don't think it's more than 10 years away.
Yeah.
So I guess at the point 3 years from now, if we review the rate, we should start building in some capital improvement money. Whether it's just for a match of a federal grant or state grant or something like that, but this is one of those areas we know we're gonna spend money, probably at the water treatment plant too, but that's the precinct.
Yeah.
And that brought me to a clarifying question, which is, so we set the rates or the town sets the rates?
We set the rates.
Set the rates, but what role, if any, does the precinct have?
None.
None.
Not in the sewer. Only in the
Sewer, okay.
Kentucky water.
Okay.
They probably will be raising their water rates though, just like I think both precincts will be raising their water rates.
So I'm gonna make a motion that we raise the rates 30% in 25, 30%, 26, 30%, 27, FY 25, 26, 27. And then we reevaluate when I'm off the board. You think you'll still be here?
Mm.
I'll
I
come in and
might
speak to it.
I'm like, who came up with this plan?
So, okay. I'll second that, but further discussion on this? Okay.
So really though, we're just voting on something to be discussed at a public hearing.
Right.
Correct, yeah.
We are not making a motion to cement this Okay.
We have to go through this public hearing before it can be cemented.
Yeah,
So we will, if you vote this, we'll schedule the public hearing probably for your next meeting and publicize that this is
Yeah.
what's being proposed. We'll update all of this so we have good numbers with that plan.
Yeah, but that is correct process wise, Vicky. I tend to agree with Jeff that like, I mean, it feels like there's no great answers. The 50% feels too aggressive to me, but I also appreciate the fact that, you know, we've been undercharging for the whole time this has existed. So we're between a rock and a hard place, I think. So I think it's reasonable to put this forward, but curious to hear what you two think. Or if you have thoughts on a different number approach.
no, I don't have enough context to have a different idea.
I appreciate the softening of it, just because there is so much going on.
Mhm.
And then I'd be very interested at a public hearing in purposefully inviting EDC, seeing under the policy questions, like, does this support to have that conversation, just to bring them in, to the public hearing. That's all. We all talk about wanting commercial a lot, and this is one of those like nitty gritty,
Mhm.
unflashy things that has to happen. So having them be a part of that, I think is important.
Right, and this will trickle down to the businesses that rent space.
Correct.
I know what it is.
Yeah, there's some. Gave no one here and there.
All right, are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No, okay.
We'll have Steve address this at the public hearing.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for putting that together for us, Neil.
Sure.
When we schedule a public hearing on something that I feel like is so information heavy as this, do we pre-share this kind of information, these slides, so that folks can digest that before? showing
Yes,
up?
we'll update all this and put that out.
you.
I think it might be interesting to make some of those bar graphs go backwards in time so that we can illustrate Sabrina's point of how much we've been undercharging.
And how much the rest of the taxpayers are subsidizing those people.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. I mean, we're all paying for it because we're undercharging them for the service.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we're paying Hennecker Septic to come and empty our private septic tanks without taxpayer subsidies. I hear your message.
Some of what makes this more difficult is the system was designed in 3 phases and only phase 1 was built.
What does that mean? What was the rest gonna be?
So it was going to go out further to cover areas like,
I think it was gonna include
Street.
Park originally, Spring Street, yeah.
yeah, and Amesbury, it doesn't go into Amesbury. Some of those places, which Norm's very glad of at the moment. But your fixed costs would have been spread over 600 users. There are 600 water users where we only have 222 sewer users. If all the water users use sewer, that fixed fee brings you more right there. And then the usage, you could keep, your rates would not have to be as high.
What stopped the project from moving into the next phase?
I think that they didn't appropriate money or they decided
Well,
they.
We just a phase 1 kind of town. Know that.
Yes.
I know the engineering for Amesbury was a problem because there's a lot of ledge back there and the roads are very hilly. And I think they would have had to have 3 different pump stations.
Oh,
What era, was this like in the 80s? Like I have
it
no.
was, I think, early
Well,
80s.
Amesbury was built in the 60s.
So, but the sewer project, the phases, do we know what era we're talking? Is it like the 70s, 60s?
Yeah, it was when they took the pipes out of the river. Was when they built the sewer, and Hopkinton was one of the last towns to do that. They didn't really.
Stop dumping in the river?
Yeah.
Okay,
Go us.
but so a while ago,
Yeah, a long
perhaps
time ago.
before some of us were born. Okay, good to know.
All right.
So yeah, we built this really expensive system, but didn't add enough people to keep it,
support
to
it.
support it. Okay. It's good. And it's just
Yeah.
been going on.
And,
this way
and,
for
and I'm sure there
4 years.
was a lot more involved in that. It's simple to say that, for me to say that now, but
Mhm.
it's true. If there were more users, we'd probably be better off now. All right, transfer station gate. I think somebody had asked that information.
Yes.
Jeff has the information on that. Let me see if I can pull something up.
Yeah, because we talked about this before town meeting, right? Is that right?
Yeah, the reason
Yeah.
I asked about it is because I was reading your all's minutes from before town
I
meeting.
need to get a life.
I think he's crushing it.
I appreciate you.
So, and we waited until after town meeting because we want to make sure the green bag thing had been resolved. But,
Yes,
you know,
yes,
For
it makes a
for
lot of sense.
a little background for you all. We did a couple of days at the transfer station checking stickers, permits. And the first time we did it, we brought stickers with us. So if you had a driver's license and your registration, you'd get a sticker. I think we gave out 150 or 200 stickers. We had 10 or 12 people that weren't from either Hopkinton or Webster trying to use the transfer station. That's a problem. We've heard complaints about that anecdotally from a lot of different sources. And one of the issues that the second time wasn't as bad. There were more people with stickers. There were a few people who didn't have them. They still got angry when we made them turn around. We made them turn around this time. They weren't too happy with that. One of the issues that came up is, the availability of stickers. People coming in from out of town who, if the staff doesn't catch it, well,
Right.
then someone from Concord's got a truck full of stuff and they're gonna dump it. By the way, that was broke down today. I don't know if you know about that, but
What was broke?
the hopper,
Oh. Today?
almost out to the halfway out the other end of the garage.
Oh, doesn't take long.
And so someone suggested RFID, which is, it's a barcode sticker and you get it for, so I contacted this company, they came out, met with me and Dan and Jolene and, Dan and Jolene asked a lot of questions, which were good, because I don't know that much about the operation. They gave us a quote, essentially to put in, 2 arms,
Yeah,
camera system. It needs line of sight to the office so that they can communicate if, it's Wi-Fi goes across from the point of, and I don't know if you're familiar with the transfer station, but as you go down the road, there's a turn off to the left where the 18 wheels go.
Yeah.
In the basement of the hopper. We put the gate right there. So that if there's room there, so if somebody doesn't have a sticker and can't get in, turn around, get out. If you have a sticker, the RFID system reads it, the arm goes up, in you go. We have a camera system, so we could take pictures of license plates if we want to. And there'd be a way for Jolene and the team to remote open the gate. If someone is coming in for a justifiable reason. That was one of the things when we checked stickers. We had 4 or 5 people. Oh, I just have to go see Jolene. Your sticker? Nope. Why is your car full of trash if you just go to see Jolene? And so this is something that we'd have to coordinate with Webster. We'd have to get everybody, we get new stickers, there'd be a process of notifying people. It'd probably have to be direct mail to every household in town. To say, look, we're going to this system, get your sticker in advance. Because you won't be able to get in. It's not like you're gonna be able to sweet talk Jeff when you get there. That works with everybody. You're gonna have to have a sticker as of this date.
mhm,
We'll probably have to be there throwing people out. But there are people from out of town who use the transfer station. That's, we saw that when we checked stickers. And we're paying for it. I mean, back to we're subsidizing people from Concord who don't want to go to the Concord transfer station.
yeah, did it sound kind of like 10% of the people that you,
Yeah, it was between 8 and 10% the first time,
yeah.
much less the second time, but they saw we were there, they just turned around and they came in, you could see that they were running. Again, we'd have to coordinate this with Webster. It's not as expensive as I thought it was gonna be.
I agree. I thought it seems so reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, the public education piece is gonna be painful for everybody.
That'll cost money too. Yeah.
Um,
Did Dan and Jolene have initial? thoughts?
Dan was more concerned at the beginning than at the end. These guys did a good job answering his questions. They'd done it elsewhere.
Okay. I was
Same
gonna
with
ask.
Jolene. Certainly, I don't want to speak for Dan, but he was much more receptive to it. Once we got through the particulars of where the arms might be,
Mhm.
is it gonna be a raised concrete island that his people have to plow around? That sort of thing. I mean, those are his operational concerns. I get that.
Mhm.
The same with the 18 wheelers coming out, making sure that they have enough turn radius to get past the island.
Mhm.
And, but overall, I would say he was supportive. Certainly, I'd want to have him in to say that for himself.
Mhm.
So am I correct in envisioning a gate kind of like at Elmbrook? Where there's something in the middle and then you either drive on one side of it or the other?
So I don't know Elmwood well enough to answer that directly.
Okay,
But it would be an island in the middle of the road
yeah,
with two arms, one on each side. If you're going in, you get this one to go up. When you're going out, this one opens up automatically
got it,
when you get close enough.
yeah.
I think they're 12 feet long.
We wouldn't have to like build a fence. We just assume that people would not be bananas enough to drive out
around
into
it.
like
In the
field.
ditch.
It's funny that we did actually discuss that, and Dan said, well, if we've got the license plate ID,
Yeah,
they drive around. Send TJ over to say hello.
Excellent.
Not that TJ wants to do that every day, but. When we checked license plates, frankly, I had TJ on speed dial. I had two people who basically said, after you, I'm going in.
Mhm.
And I said, okay, I'll call TJ and give me a license plate, have a good day.
There were some angry people. I stood
Yeah,
out there with
very.
Jen.
Yeah.
There, and it's like, we're here on a Saturday trying to, fix a problem. So thank you for your appreciation. No, it's shocking. Most people are pretty nice, but there's a measurable number of people who are mean.
And, there were people with company vehicles who, it's not registered here in town, it's registered in Manchester, because that's where my company is.
Yeah,
We gotta figure that out.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, there were some questions like that came up around our talk about
Or-
stickers.
I borrowed my dad's truck because I got a
Mhm.
bunch of stuff to take out.
Mhm.
Again. Those are the cases that we have to figure out collectively, or Dan and Jolene have to figure out. I don't want to take over their,
You get a temporary hall pass from
Right,
town
I mean,
hall.
basically, that's.
They hand in and then they beep you out. I'm joking, but
No, it
there's
does.
solutions to all those things, right? Those are all like logistical things
they're
and
just issues that, when we were checking stickers, it came up, I don't know,
Yeah.
probably a dozen times for the 2 hours I was there, and I don't know, Sabrina had, but. Just things that we need to figure out, but we need to talk to Webster about it, obviously.
Yeah.
But it would be good to try to do it. In the next 6 months if we could.
first, thank you for all the information. And then my initial reactions are yay, like creating a system that lets the staff do their work and not be babysitting
Yep.
the physical location. And then assuming that both departments were in favor of it, then it's like, yeah, because if not, obviously it's their working environment. They're the
Yeah.
ones who this is all coming down on. So
It's gonna, when we first started, it's gonna fall to the town clerks who gotta
yeah,
do stickers, and they both ran out when we started checking them. So many people wanted to get them. That they both ran out and had to order new ones, and. Well, they'll have to do that again, of course, but.
not like the logistics can be hammered out as long as the staff are on board and we feel it does and it would address the
Mhm.
root issue that many folks say is driving up our costs. So
Yeah, there would definitely be some like upfront pain in terms of educating people and people being annoyed or whatever, but I do think so you guys know we've had this journey with green bags. And part of our bigger discussions were around like things we can control and do that are, like real actions, like, so standing out there and trying to revamp the stickers was one thing. It was like low hanging fruit, like things we could just take action on now. And so this feels like a very real step to tackle a problem. So for the short term upfront pain, I think longer term, it makes a ton of sense. And it's a very fair thing. Unlike a lot of people had issues with green bags, saying it's not fair because Webster doesn't do it, blah, blah, blah. So this feels like an obvious concrete step we could take. Question around Webster, so would they,
You would,
they say,
you would want to come to an. I don't think you've discussed that. There was discussion sort of with new stickers and all of that,
Right.
but nothing
We did not-
firm, because partly we needed to know the outcome of the green bag thing,
Right.
because that changes. Now everybody's the same,
Mhm.
which makes it easier to implement this
Yeah.
or something different. But I think it would have to be an agreement. Although there would have to be those discussions around.
Mhm.
I imagine that questions that will come up in the process are things like, what amount of money do we actually think this would save us? And so would pay it for itself or not? And if so, in how many years? What do we do if it breaks, right? Like what's the maintenance cost like? And who do you call if it stops working so that
And it's the gate systems.
my joking scenario of driving around the gate doesn't become something where you have,
Right.
a day's worth of traffic doing that. And then obviously the staff right now don't have to spend they don't spend a ton of time babysitting, so it wouldn't necessarily get them more time back, but at least it would take that headache, like it wouldn't be hanging over them anymore.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Except for people who don't have stickers and they have to call up to the office or beat the office to get let in.
And the cameras are good because some
Right.
people might leave their trash at the gate.
Mm.
And so we'd likely, I mean, logistically, yes, there's the communication to the town, if we moved forward, like all of that education, communication, and then clear postings as to what you cannot do at this location and what the ramifications of doing so would be.
And then I would assume when you implement it, you have people at the gate during that first initial
Yeah, the first.
time to work through that.
Kinks.
And a period of time to phase it in.
So if we are interested in exploring it further, what do we do next?
Meet with Webster.
Or should we revisit with Dan first, or do we think he's
Yeah, that's probably not a bad idea either.
maybe Dan first, then
Yeah,
Webster?
he's trying to get out of the house.
Is that redundant? Should we just invite Webster and Dan so that everyone's questions get aired?
I think
need
because
to lock
Dan
down
is
the
a town
interviews.
employee, I
Yeah.
want to respect his opinions and thoughts, and it might change something that we present to Webster based off of his experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
My little smartwatch said, take a walk. You've been sitting for an hour. Time to stand up and stretch your legs. Thank you, little watch. Thank you.
I
Okay.
think all
so-
meetings should end in less than an hour so that message doesn't come up.
Blame the chair.
We blame the chair. It's great. Okay, then moving things right along. Are we good on the?
Blame the two newbies who have 1 bazillion questions.
So when do we wanna? Do we just invite Dan to the next meeting or to the?
Probably not the next meeting because that agenda is already 6 hours.
Okay,
If you're doing a public hearing and stuff, but
yeah,
probably soon after that,
okay,
maybe the meeting after that.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay, so Dan, meeting after next.
if we decide, if everyone's cool with it, we decide to move forward and Webster's on board. Do we then have to have a public hearing? No,
No, because this is an operational
Okay.
type thing. It's really only ordinances and raising fees that you have to have a public hearing.
okay,
And a official public hearing.
So Jeff, did you mention that 6-month timeline because this estimate has an expiration?
No, it may
Okay,
have an expiration, I don't actually know.
okay,
But I just knowing that we're gonna have to go through, you know, come to agree with Dan, come to agree with Webster,
yeah,
getting the system ordered, getting the stickers and distributing them. Those are all
making our communication calendar.
time, so,
Uh-huh. Yeah,
and very little will happen during the summer, so.
okay, thank you.
So does anything else come to mind, Neil? Just because now we're pushing out to 4 weeks from now when you're gonna be like, maybe, you know.
There'll be,
Gone.
I think having a discussion with Dan and Jolene makes sense and go
He
from,
doesn't care
Go
because the
from
next
there.
meeting is his last meeting.
so.
Okay. Okay, we move on to the priorities list.
Sure, I was just wondering if there's anything I need to add to it, if this is my priorities list for the next 5 weeks. So,
Where are we with the attorney issue up by me?
so all the enforcement stuff I expect to be all done before I leave.
Good.
So,
Thank you.
and we'll talk a little bit more about some other legal, just an update on anything else legal that's standing out there. Tax deeding, we're moving forward with that, so we'll try to get that at least rolling. And we've already updated on the projects, town meeting projects, and I'm trying to get all my stuff relatively organized and things written down that need to be, so.
What is where is the committee at with reviewing resumes?
Sure, so they have them all.
Mhm.
The deadline technically isn't until Thursday, but none have recently
Yeah, I
come in.
noticed that.
They are meeting Thursday. They intend to determine who they're interviewing, which they will interview next week. And so 2 weeks from tonight, they will be here to present to you their recommendations. And then really on my calendar is for you to schedule times so you can do your interviews the week of the 21st, which is 2 weeks from now. Because
How
I
many
think
total?
there are 20 total. I would guess they'll recommend 3 to 5, probably 2 to 5, 2 to depending.
Sure.
But I think vacation week, we're not meeting that week because people are away. So either it has to happen the week of, ideally, it would happen the week of the 21st, your interviews, and then pretty close to having a decision to finalize that.
Our next meeting is Monday, the 21st, right?
Yep. So there'll be a non-public where the committee will come in and present their findings. You have access to everything that's been submitted.
Yep.
So because it's personnel and it's non-public, we can just schedule the interviews with the finalists when we're able to, whenever. when it's scheduled.
Well, you can always schedule it. So we'll publish it as a meeting,
Okay,
and then it will say this meeting will predominantly be a non-public session.
Mhm.
I always say predominantly just in case something, you want to sign something, but for the most part, that's it. So.
All right,
So I don't know if you want to think about times that week.
Right.
You may want to get it on your calendar.
Mhm.
And then we can I'll reserve a location. maybe to say when I interviewed, my first interview was in the community room. And then my second interview was at the library and I came back and nobody was in the community room. And that's kind of a panicky thing. I didn't realize there was a history room, so I did find it eventually, so.
So you're saying try to get some like chunks of time for that week to.
For that week, probably if you're making your decisions of who to interview on Monday night,
Mhm.
maybe towards the end of that week,
Mhm.
because we'll need time to try to get those people.
How is people's week that week?
I am free anytime on Wednesday.
Mhm.
Thursday, I'm going to the municipal association thing from 9 to 4:30,
Mhm.
but I'm free before or after that. And then Friday, free all day.
Friday's very open for me too. Jeff, do you know if you'll be in the country or?
As of right now, I have an evening meeting on the 24th, which is Thursday.
Mhm.
Wednesday is pretty clear. I have one conference call on Tuesday. And I have one call on Monday, so.
Well, why don't we try to sort of. You say Wednesday afternoon? We have some
Do
availability.
the full afternoon or the full morning, whatever works for you.
Well, maybe, can you guys do Wednesday afternoon too? Like maybe if we could block off,
Make it work.
try to, and then you're out all day Thursday for the
Mhm.
municipal.
We could just block off the whole afternoon and do them back to back, and if it's an hour a piece or an hour and 20 minutes a piece or whatever, that's.
Yeah, why don't we block
Sure.
off Wednesday afternoon, but then can we also do Friday?
Friday.
I can make
Yeah.
any time work.
And Friday, if we,
Yeah, as like in case the interviewee cannot do Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Slash, if we need to break it up.
okay.
Like my Friday will probably stay pretty open, but I'm beholden to the state legislature, so sometimes things come up. Like Wednesday afternoon's clear for now, but it's possible. It might not be as I get closer.
But by the Monday, you'll know.
The week before, I'll know.
Preference, if it works for folks, is Friday. I know we have our town hall thing that Friday morning. But Friday morning is a preference. That said, I can make whatever work.
Okay. So we'll hold Wednesday afternoon. Friday morning is better, you said. But maybe we could use Friday as like a. Make it work if we need to.
great, and you'll know better after they go through how many, and that will,
Yes.
We gotta figure out what we're gonna do that so you can post them.
right. It only needs 24 hours, so
Okay.
if you decide that Monday night, I can post it
Okay.
then for the Wednesday and Friday. Good. Yeah, so there are 20 applicants. The committee is reviewing them all now. They're meeting Thursday. They've been meeting at the fire station, which is a good place for them to meet. And they're narrowed down and we'll schedule interviews for next week. So that's the full update there.
For our interviews, y'all. On that Monday, will we sit down and talk about what questions we want to ask? Is there a suggested list of
so.
questions? I mean, it's me, I'll always have questions, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
We
we'll
have
just.
a plan walking into the.
I've given the committee some sample questions. All right, I had mine that I've always used. The best ones I found, I put town administrator questions into AI and it spit out really good questions. And then it said, do you have more detail? And I said Hopkinton, New Hampshire, and it covered foods, it
Wow.
did very good. So,
Okay.
but we have all those, so I can send out to you what I have. I have all the ones I had from MR. I had ones that were used in another interview that I was part of too, so.
And if you happen to know which ones they are using in their pre-interviews, just that we're not necessarily duplicating if we don't need to.
They will decide that Thursday. They're going
Love it.
through and doing that, so I can let you know.
Thank you.
Okay. All right,
All right.
on to purchasing policy.
Yes, so you have a copy of recommended purchasing policy changes. It largely updates it because it hasn't been updated in a while with amounts. You have the red line version, which are the changes, and then a clean version. Also, it does eliminate POs because we haven't really used those. It still keeps all the requirements. It just doesn't require a PO. So this is sort of that first presentation of that. If there's any questions, I can answer those. And if not, I'd recommend you look at it and then vote to adopt it at your next meeting.
Okay.
We also are finalizing an update to the personnel policy. So my hope is to give you that first draft by next meeting. These are two policies we've kind of been working on a while, and I just want to get them wrapped up.
Okay. All right, any immediate questions on that? We'll get it for our next meeting.
Did we do an RFP for the ambulance?
That is through a buying cooperative, so it is part of that. And if it's state bid, we
Like a
do,
cruiser, don't have to.
and the cruiser, we didn't do the cruiser. Yeah, and that is over the amount. Although if they're the only ones with chargers.
So just in general, though, we're updating these amounts because it's been such a long time since this was done and inflation XYZ.
That's largely it. This is kind of practical. It covers it. We want to make sure we're following it.
So do you want us to send you notes?
Sure. If you have any.
Okay.
Is there magic to the 20,000 number?
No, just the
Seems low to me.
seems low. Yeah, the amount we upped everything, but largely Kelly came up with those, most of those.
I'd argue for 30 or even 50.
All right.
Right, that's
So,
that.
Town administrator updates.
Yes, I have a few. The first one is we have received a forest fire pool grant for $1,700, but it needs to be signed, so I have a,
What was it called?
it's a forest fire
Oh,
grant
forest fire. Thank you.
for $1,700 to buy 8 shirts, 7 Romex pants, 10 helmets, 10 goggles, 4 backpack pumps, and 6 fire rake cutting tools.
Yes,
So,
please. I want all of that.
Just what I was thinking of.
That's it. So I have a motion, which I thought I was going to put up, but I don't seem to have it saved, which basically authorizes, so the motion.
I move that we accept the grant and authorize me to sign for it.
Yeah, I'll just read this into the record because it's their wording, but that that the OAS town administrator is duly authorized to enter into contracts or agreements on behalf of the town of Hopkinton with the state of New Hampshire, acting by and through the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, and is further authorized to execute any document on behalf of this municipality which may be, in his judgment, desirable or necessary to effect the purpose of the resolution.
It almost sounds like $1,700 is not enough money for all of that stuff.
I think it is. They submitted it, I assume it is.
So when we, let's say, we want to buy these things and we have this grant, and then when you hit view cart, the cart is more than the grant amount.
You can't
Okay.
overexpend
You would just
the amount.
pull things, you would reduce the
Yes,
quantities.
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. Or take it out of existing budget line if
Mhm.
there was some money budgeted.
Do-
Was there a
Want to
motion?
Repeat that or? Say,
Should Jeff
Oh,
say it
the
again?
motion? Wait, was.
You don't have to say it
It's-
again.
okay,
So
it's
you
Jeff's
moved,
motion.
seconded him.
yeah.
I
So-
second Jeff's motion.
Okay,
To accept the language and allow Neil to sign on our behalf.
all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Great. All right. We did the TA search. We're working to restructure the food pantry or to keep that going. The people that were doing it before left. We're kind of Lisette is largely running it right now. We're keeping it going through this transition, but that's still moving on.
There is a new batch of volunteers who are.
There are,
taking over.
and really all the people doing the actual food pantry are the old volunteers that have been
Cool.
amazing and are great and are doing that. It's sort of the putting the board together and getting that transitioned correctly and making sure that's all set. So hopefully that will go pretty quickly. I'm gonna meet with Laura and Jim, Laura Taylor, the school business administrator, and Jim Rozicki, buildings and grounds, just to talk about, I guess, probably mostly things that are in my head that would be helpful if they knew. The budget committee meets on Wednesday night. This is their first meeting of the year. Tomorrow, our tour is at the sewer facility and on Friday at the library. We have pallets of green bags coming, which we'll put in the barn for now. So you will see in our trash cans probably for the next
20 years.
50 years. Green bags. So,
I got 10 at my house.
so we're in the process of closing out that account and doing all that. So those are coming on Wednesday. So given our
They're gonna go. in
history with
Houston
green
barn.
bags, I have a feeling they're gonna fall over on top of me, but other than that.
They're gonna get devoured by rats.
There are no rats in Houston barn as of the moment. So, and I think that was everything on my list.
Okay. I'm sorry, I can't make tomorrow morning.
So does that mean, is it just Vicky and I? Is Stephen supposed to be?
Oh, yeah.
Do we know? Oh, you'll be there? Awesome.
And I haven't heard that Stephen
That's
won't
too-
be. I know he had a work
I know
commitment
it.
tonight.
Tuesday I'll be there. Friday and Tuesday after that I'll be.
Cool.
Okay,
Excuse me.
all right. So that brings us to public forum, to our two people, online and one
Well, you've got
person in
something to say.
person. Now's your chance. Oh, all right, Bonnie.
Unmute. Think I'm unmuted here. I have 4 questions, if that's not too much. The one, going back, the ongoing projects. I'm looking for an update on the chain link fence that's been requested for the transfer station trash from down onto the bank. And I don't know where that 3 town committees one from Webster have asked for that over and a total of 21. And we don't know what's, is that an object? And so what would be the update on that?
On our end.
Bonnie, you're breaking up quite a bit. I don't know if you're turning away from the microphone while you're talking or it's a bad mic, but we're only getting half of what you're saying.
We did gather a question about a chain link fence at the transfer station.
Yeah, can you hear me any better now?
Seems a
Yeah,
little better.
that seems a little better.
Okay, so what I was saying, I was thinking about the ongoing projects topic that you all went through.
Yeah. Yeah,
And that, I think, would be an ongoing project and a particularly expensive one. And I'm interested to know the status of that. Because the Webster Conservation Commission, the Hopkinton Conservation Commission, and the Hopkinton Waste Reduction Committee have asked for that over 2 years. And that includes 21 people. So I'm wondering if that is ever going to happen and how we could possibly move it forward.
I do not know the answer. Is this like an official project? of the transfer station,
I
or-
don't think we budgeted for a chain link fence. We do have a temporary fence there.
Actually, a temporary fence was put up 2 years ago and it fell down within a week of being put up. So we really don't have any fence.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll check on that.
all right. Neil will check on the status of a temporary fence. I think we'd have to revisit a permanent fence because it sounds like we did not budget for that. I don't really recall discussing this, to be honest, but we will, Neil will look into it and we can pick this back up after he's looked into it.
Well, maybe it never got put forward to the select board. Jeff,
It's
do you-
possible, it is possible we talked about it, I just don't remember, but
Okay,
Have we gotten to the point of pricing this fence out?
I don't know. That's not, my procurement isn't a big thing, but I heard you mention that a fence had been put up along George Park. And could use that as an estimate? See if it's a comparative length and what did that cost?
Yeah, I think, Bonnie, just to make sure I'm getting it right, it sounds like a couple different committees, and I know I've heard, not in this forum, but I've heard, and I've talked about a fence in the transfer station. If someone, Neil, this is just a process question, if someone sees a need for something in the facility, where do they go to advocate for that need to end up into the plan or end up budgeted for, or?
Sure. So their first step would be to talk to the department head. And then after that, it could certainly come to the board. They did do a letter to the board.
Twice.
So there's been letters to the board from the committees asking for this. And I believe, Bonnie, the purpose of it is to stop trash from blowing into the surrounding area, correct?
Yes, because our recycling area is built backwards. All of the bays are open to the wind. And anything that rolls out of the bays can be blown over the bank and into the wetland. And also when the snow is plowed out, it all gets pushed over the bank there. And that's the Deer Meadow Brook wetland down there.
Yeah, and the intention, right, it's not like a fence for a fence sake, it's a fence to catch that trash / recycling so that it can be picked up more easily as opposed to just spreading out into the wetland. Is that right?
Exactly, yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you for bringing it back up, Bonnie. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Let's see. My second question was about going back to the sewer rates, since I'm in the Patuca precinct. If the rates go up and that chart, it was comparing the 50 over 2 years or 20 over 3 years. At some point, the revenue, the operational expenses. Is that right?
Yes.
So what becomes of that revenue? Do we still have to keep paying at that rate, even though our revenue is very much exceeding the expense of the system?
As I understood it, Bonnie, the purpose would be to have money for future capital improvements so that when an instance like what's happening right now with needing to remove the sludge or fixing the sewer, things like that, that it would be, the money would be there as opposed to needing to do a bond for the whole town.
So we would maybe put together a revolving fund, a sewer revolving fund or something, dedicated fund? No?
The sewer fund is a separate fund already.
But they could do a capital reserve fund within it, couldn't they?
We do have capital reserves, but not a revolving funds can only be done for, there's only for specific purposes. So that's not one of them. Just to be,
But the excess revenue could include some money put aside for future capital improvements.
yes, it would remain in the sewer fund and could be used for capital expenses.
So the purpose of having more coming in than the operational cost is so that when things need to get fixed, it's not a shock to the system and it doesn't cost as much money.
Right.
Theoretically.
Theoretically, given our anticipated capital costs coming up, I'm not
We're still gonna be
sure we're going to ever be building much beyond. I'm not sure we're even going to cover capital costs.
Right, but it would be something toward.
Absolutely.
Okay, I was just worried that maybe that revenue would go into the general fund and get spent on other things. So it was,
No, it cannot, it can only be used for sewer costs.
okay, good, thanks. A third question on the forest fire equipment, that's something we have had before and we are replacing, or is this new?
I think
She asked if the forest fire equipment is new or is it something we're replacing?
I don't know. We have to replace equipment. It's probably replacement.
Probably replacement.
Okay, so what's the frequency of forest fires in Hopkinton?
The
Do we have
frequency
a
of-
lot? Like,
Just to,
We had a brush fire last summer, right?
yeah, we haven't had as many recently, but we probably have 2 to 10 brush fires a year. Most of them are relatively small. We have had some big ones when the mast yard has had numerous forest fires that were big.
okay, so those fires, the equipment that the regular fire service has can't be used to fight brush fires?
It's different equipment that you would use to fight a house fire versus this is goggles and backpacks, and this is largely what you take into the woods, and rakes because you have to open everything up because the fire gets into the ground.
Mhm.
And
And this is
this-
a grant.
And this is a grant
Yeah.
that can only be expended for forest fire equipment.
Okay. All right, and then my last question was about, did you say that there are pallets of green bags coming in
That is correct.
that have been paid for?
That is correct. Because when you buy them, you have to buy them in lots. So
Yeah.
these were bought a couple years ago.
Okay, so they've already been paid for?
Yes.
So then can people get those green bags to use?
We haven't figured out what we're doing with them, but I would assume so.
Well, I'm just thinking for the few of us who have subsidized the rest of the town by continuing to buy green bags through thick and thin, if we have a pile of green bags sitting around, could we use them?
Audie, are you saying give them out to the townspeople?
Yeah,
I don't know.
How many rolls are coming?
We'll see when they come in and how many we have and what
Okay,
we have.
I mean, my inclination, and don't hold me to this, right? This is just me spitballing here, is if there is truly a pallet of bags coming in, of which it'll take us a decade to get through at town hall, by all means, setting up a come grab a roll of trash bags that we can't do anything else with, that we can't sell, that we can't, feels very reasonable, but obviously see what comes in,
Okay,
take it from there.
Mhm.
all right, thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Norm, do you have comments?
Norm Gupel, 121 Amesbury Road. I have 20 questions. No. So just for the record, you can have 1,000 applicants and no one will ever be like you and being awesome. So I want to make sure they're hoping. Yeah. Just real quick, one thing about the track, I really want to commend you guys on doing a great job of maintaining it. It's been fantastic. You know, we started track season and it's been great to see the kids being safely running on that and not having grass patches in there. Because when you're running pretty fast on there, you can hurt yourself. I think just one area, we talked about the discus at some point being set up.
That's scheduled to be done. It will be done by the end of the month.
Perfect, awesome. And then just the last thing was the runway for the high jump, the mower cut that area. I'm not sure if they're aware of that. So the high jump, there's this rubber part that's been cut by the town mower. So when the kids run and do their high jump, it's been
Like a pitcher's mound they take off from, essentially.
what, yeah. So it's just, I don't know if that's something that is on the radar for the select board and everything. So
Wouldn't be the select board. If you let Dan reserve know, he can let Dan.
let Dan know. Okay,
and
perfect.
Greg,
Whatever,
if
whatever.
it's something, but that may be school equipment, not town equipment.
Okay, I can
I'm
let
not
them.
sure, but they would know.
Okay, perfect. You could just want to be safe for everybody. That is it, and welcome you two to the select board. It's great to see you guys, and I will not keep your meeting any longer. So have a fantastic night.
It'll go a long time after we leave to learn about
Okay.
that.
All right, thank you guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, Norm.
Take care.
Anyone else for public forum? All right, thank you for everyone who joined us. So next we have board committee updates.
So I had a housing committee. I went to my first housing committee, guys. And I just wanted to share that the housing committee is mid-project right now, with the consultants they're working with. And there's going to be an opportunity for the whole community to hear about the audit and the findings of that initial audit, and then weigh in on things that are important to them about housing in Hopkinton that will ultimately, what's I'm looking for, will ultimately inform the recommendations the housing committee puts forward. So I want to say that, like, if this was a beginning, middle, and end, it's probably somewhere between like a quarter and a half of the journey, if that makes sense. Like, it's still pretty early in this part of it, but it's moving along. So April 30th, I just got the thing in today, but it'll be April 30th at the library. I will send it around to literally everyone in town who I can find and post it on the Facebooks and stick it everywhere. But it's open to everyone to come on out to hear about where the housing committee is at in their process and to have a chance to chat. One thing I heard loud and clear is one of the things that makes housing very unaffordable in Hopkinton is property tax. And this conversation will not be focusing on that. It's going to be talking about housing and housing density and how do we encourage certain like types of buildings? Do we want to encourage certain types of buildings? So just naming out loud that it's going to be a lovely, robust conversation, but we'll not be touching on one aspect of what makes housing affordable or not affordable in town. But yeah, I did my first committee meeting. It happened.
Thank you. I have a question, and I think I may have asked this before, but you just reminded me of it. So does the housing committee have a mandate that will conclude?
So the housing committee actually does have, it was one of the only committees on the website that has their mandate and like what they're supposed to be doing listed. And I think it's because they're newer. And I don't get the sense that it's something that will like conclude. I get the sense that they are going to like try something and see how it takes and try something and see how it takes. I could see a world where it concludes, but I think it's an evolving need. And I got the sense that they are being, I don't want to speak for everyone, it's my first meeting, right? Like, and I'm just one person in the corner asking too many questions. And they are all thinking very deeply about the many different levers you can pull to encourage a world in which there is more housing for everyone in Hopkinton. So there's a lot of thoughts of like, if this, then that, if that, then this. So I don't think it's something that if it does end, it probably won't be for another couple of years. And they also clarified, which I did not realize, that the round of zoning amendments that just went through, which did include some housing, were not out of the housing committee. They were from the work with the zoning committee, but it is helpful to what the housing committee is working towards.
And what is the audit you mentioned?
Yeah, well, this is what they'll actually like give out at it, so I won't go too in depth into it, but they had a series of community conversations with a bunch of folks from a bunch of different backgrounds around town to get their feelings. There's a lot of data, but those are more about people's perceptions of housing in town, because as we know, people's perceptions is often reality. So how do they perceive what is available in town?
So beige book versus blue book.
I don't want to contradict you.
Yeah, please do.
I think the audit was a review of the zoning ordinance.
That was the zoning.
Okay. Is there a housing audit too? Oh, okay,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
Is
okay.
that Judy Barrett doing that?
And that will include a
Yeah.
review of zoning.
It
but I
will,
think it's
yeah.
not at that point yet.
Right.
So we received a housing opportunity, HOP, which is confusing being in HOP.
Yeah.
But a HOP grant, this is phase 2 and 3, and they've hired Bartlett consultants.
Barrett.
And this is what the consultant is bringing back.
So
So-
it's mostly aggregate from interviews?
It is. At this
Interviews
point.
and data that's available in the town. But I'm gonna post it because they just sent it out today, April 30th. If you guys can make it, please do. It's a cool opportunity to hear what's going on. And then there'll be more opportunities later on in the summer because it is during spring break week.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say
unfortunately.
that date sounds like problematic to me.
Yeah, but there'll be more opportunities
Okay.
coming in June. So
We sent over 100 emails to people to sign up to talk to do these interviews.
I see.
I'm not part of I sent the emails because we thought it was
Come on,
better to
yeah.
come from somebody.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, what is our, I mean, I guess it's probably up to the individual, but if you were to, let's say Sabrina goes to this and goes up to the mic to express something about her thoughts on the levers that could be pulled. Do you just have to sort of explain that you were coming from a personal citizen point of view and not
Yeah.
representing the board?
Yeah, I think that's right. Because I've spoken at like school board meetings before. I
Sure.
think I usually say I'm not speaking. Well, it's not usually relevant to anything the select board would be discussing anyway. But yes, I think that's a fair thing to say, that you're on the select board, but your comments are personal and not representing the board.
Yeah, Mr. NATO pulls that a lot at
Yeah.
budget committee.
I think that's a nice thing to do. We don't really have like, official rules around that, but
Okay.
yeah. Unless it was Alyssa and she was speaking on behalf of the board.
unless you were going rogue, but no, it's.
Okay, thank you for that update.
Yeah.
It's exciting. All right, any other board committee updates? Okay. Anything for other?
Ken's not on.
That's right. We have 3 non-publics, so
Oh,
I
today?
believe, yes, indeed.
Okay.
Once we go into non-public, which I assume we will vote to do, afterwards we will adjourn and will not conduct any other business. So I will move that we go into non-public under RSA 91A32E, which is legal, also A, which is personnel, and also C, which is reputation. All right, and it's a roll call vote. So Jeff,
Yes.
Vicky, hi. I mean, yes.
Yes.
Great. All right. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks.